Imagine being the most criticized driver of recent times because you have the best car and you can't achieve the results of your teammate. This is Lando Norris, who, however, today won in Monaco ahead of Leclerc, who put pressure on him until the end. It's a shame for Charles because he really deserved this victory in Monaco. And above all, with a different car, maybe we could have seen him up there like last year, then third Piastri, fourth Verstappen, who believed until the end. For a safety car, a virtual one, or even a red flag to bring him to first position. Fifth Hamilton and so on, all the others. Now let's go comment on the race. Together, let's look at the most critical situations of the Grand Prix. I also share my opinion on the decision to mandate double stops. Before we start, as always, I remind you, of course, to leave a like, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos. Please remember to like, to support. It's crucial to support the content. Having said that, I want to take a moment to discuss the rankings with you. Norris made the fastest lap in 1:13.221 on the final lap of the race. A sign that McLaren obviously was the best car here in Monaco too, and it showed. However, the pace at the end with Verstappen ahead of Norris, Leclerc and Piastri was clearly slower. It was a pace that Verstappen needed to try to have the best strategy in case a city car came out or if there was also a red flag. Norris was there, sandwiched between Verstappen and Leclerc, and he couldn't push them any further because he had Verstappen in front and Leclerc behind, putting a lot of pressure on him. We also saw the last laps, guys. Charles did something incredible in the last laps because he really came very close to taking the victory. He made it to the podium. I also want to show you some images, even from the last laps, where he tried everything to try to attack Norris. And it's a shame because here is Leclerc behind Norris with medium tires. Among other things, Leclerc, while Norris had, if I'm not mistaken, had hard tires. Yes, exactly. Norris had hard tires the last laps and Leclerc did something extraordinary. You could see that he was taking different trajectories on the track compared to Norris. He was carrying much more speed in the casino area but there Norris was regaining energy to try to use it. Then in the tunnel area and also afterwards on the straight, because the only attack points were seen to be either the port chicane and a bit at the Rascasse too, Leclerc was approaching and the Santa Vogue because then he was getting so close. Perhaps the only thing that Leclerc could do differently, in my opinion, was to try to take the hairpin with a perhaps different trajectory. He's tried to cross, but it's really challenging despite already accomplishing a great deal, in my view. Leclerc must have been there all night thinking, where can I overtake Norris in this race? But I want to take a small step back because right from the start, we saw Leclerc who tried. Let's take a quick recap of the race, then we'll also look at the situation. P-stop of the various teams. And I want to give my opinion on the championship and the points as well. So let's start from the beginning for a moment and let's look at the start together. Because the crazy thing, in my opinion, is the start that Norris made. That block where, however, he was very clever, served him in that case to try to keep Leclerc behind. Now let's see if I can find the start again. So just a moment, because there Leclerc could try to pass in that case. But here it is. This is the most iconic image, in my opinion, of the start of the Grand Prix. Because we see that Leclerc had clearly started better than Norris. In this case, however, he's on the outside and therefore couldn't attempt the attack. Leclerc tried anyway. Norris stayed on the inside, even blocking, therefore braking later than he had anticipated. In fact, you can see that he brakes a bit lightly, then he brakes harder, and that's why he locks up. But this lockup helped him maintain his position, if you will. Norris didn't have the best start of his life, but he still managed to maintain his position, keeping it ahead of Leclerc. So congratulations to Norris for this. Well done, Leclerc, because he really started off well, and also Hamilton behind. You can see this image. He had started off very well and was about to attack Alonso, then he couldn't hold the position, but Hamilton also started off very well. Then things that we saw in the first laps. The very interesting thing, in my opinion, is Ajar's strategy. In fact, Ajar made the stop almost immediately. He was one of the first to stop, in fact. Ajar stopped. I'll tell you right away. On the 14th lap, and then he mounted soft rubber for 8 laps, and then he did 59 laps. With Gamardi, in fact, it can be seen well from the graphics in this case, and he finished in 6th position. In fact, the Racing Bulls, along with Williams, made the best strategy in Monaco with the double stop. With Lawson at the beginning, who was holding back the group behind, and so I'm sacrificed in quotes. Many have said why Helmut Marko told him, oh, block the group behind. He told him the night before. So at least RGR gets closer and RGR can stretch and then stop and stay ahead of Lawson, and that's what done. Racing Bulls then, with an excellent strategy, which rewarded Aguiar in 6th position and Lawson 8th. But the even better strategy, in my opinion, was done by Williams, with Albon 9th and Sainz 10th. In fact, here too, the Williams strategy allowed the two Williams drivers to finish in the points zone. And we also heard the team radio. Now I'll show it to you with here it is. This image made me laugh a lot with Albon and Sainz and James Walls here hugging. Russell complained over team radio about being stuck in the Williams traffic. He's driving dangerously slow. He's just slamming on the brakes at all areas. In short, he's braking at every point, and this is Russell's team radio when he was behind both Sainz and Albon. And this is the Williams strategy that has paid off for Williams, who is doing better than its parent team, if you will, which is Mercedes, but Mercedes has messed up everything, guys. In fact, if we go on to comment on the time standings again, we see, as I told you, Williams who did well because it acted a bit like a stopper. First with Sainz behind, and then after Sainz, who allowed Albon to make the pit stop, then Albon blocked the group behind. Russell cut the chicane. We saw it, and we saw there how they then gave the drive-through, rightly so, in my opinion, because he cut the chicane on purpose. And then Mercedes messed up the strategy, guys. They got everything wrong, and you can't afford it, since a team like Mercedes can't afford to mess up the strategy, guys. But how is it possible? Do you know that there is a requirement for 2 stops? And you don't stop anyone in the first 70 laps, maybe in the first 60, but you don't stop anyone in the first 60 laps. It's something scandalous. And then in the end, they managed to stop. But in the end, 11th Russell, 18th Antonelli. Antonelli clearly sacrificed in this race, and Russell didn't even score points. So many points lost by Mercedes, many points gained by Racing Bulls, many points gained by Williams. And if we also look at the standings on the fly, we see that the team standings in particular, well, Ferrari has recovered many points on Mercedes. Even Red Bull has surpassed Mercedes in the Constructors standings, and they are vying for the 2nd position in the championship. But that they are all close because we see that we have Red Bull, Mercedes, and Ferrari within a few points. So be careful, because the standings also change with the Constructors, and also pay attention to the drivers' standings, because Ferrari is still attacking the Mercedes drivers. Leclerc receives 15 points, Hamilton 10 points. So also pay attention to Leclerc, who comes very close, in fact, very close to Russell. And also pay attention to Verstappen, who is extending on Mercedes. So we have a Constructors ranking with Red Bull that is only exalted by Verstappen, who has scored 136 points, and Red Bull has 143. So be careful that Verstappen has practically scored all the points for Red Bull. And we have a Mercedes that, with this 0 from Monaco, because it didn't score points with any driver, remains stationary. In the Constructors ranking, Ferrari, on the other hand, with Leclerc as 3rd place and Hamilton's 5th, totals are plus 28, which is fundamental for the fight also in the Constructors ranking. Ferrari made a full haul in this race. In my opinion, they did a great job both with Leclerc. 2nd, I said 3rd before. 2nd Leclerc and 5th Hamilton. Great job by Ferrari in the strategy, because they stopped them at the right time. Both Leclerc and Hamilton executed a great strategy. Hamilton gained position on the jar at the start, taking advantage of its slow pace in the early laps after the stop. Among other things, we also saw Alonso's retirement, a pity for him, but this also benefited Hamilton later, even though he was ahead, but he managed to finish in 5th position. In my opinion, Hamilton couldn't do more than this, and Leclerc, 2nd. Even there, he was at his maximum, one hoped, maybe something different in the end, but it was really difficult. Having said that, we have Norris in 1st place, Piastri in 3rd, McLaren also making their full haul, so McLaren really scoring a lot of points. But be careful, because Norris is still keeping the championship alive, because we see Norris with 158 points plus 25 for Norris, and Piastri with 161 points plus 15 for Piastri. So also pay attention to the drivers' standings, because we have a challenge up there with Verstappen behind, who is chasing and trying to maintain a close distance from the first two in the championship. In short, I also want to say a few things about the race itself. Beyond the strategies, it was important to get the right strategy at the right time. They realized after the various teams that it was crucial to make the second stop using one of the two drivers, especially in terms of when to make the first and second stops. This is what Racing Bulls did. This is also what Williams did. But also, for example, Haas, with Ocon, who came 7th, they used this excellent strategy with Berman, who they stopped immediately. In short, the various teams that managed to play as a team got ahead. Those who played less as a team ended up behind. Let's think about Mercedes. Let's also think about Alpine. A disastrous race with a mistake made by Gasly, who went long and then also hit the car ahead at the Harbour chicane. It's a shame Alonso withdrew as he scores another 0. And he too, in the driver's standings, is at 0 points in this case, with Stroll not even in the 14th. So this hurts for Aston Martin. Other drivers, like those from Sauber, also couldn't achieve their maximum potential. Let's say the best drivers were those who played as a team. We also saw beyond that. Instead, we must also give credit to Verstappen, who nevertheless raced alone. He came in 4th with Tsunoda 17th. Guys, Tsunoda 17th. And Verstappen, he always plays alone, always races alone, without a teammate, yet he manages to do his best. Because objectively, more than 4th place in this race, Red Bull could not do, and we must, however, give a round of applause to Ferrari, because objectively, P-stop hit, strategy hit, and more than this could not be done. In my opinion, McLaren has an even higher pace and started ahead of Leclerc. In the end, he could try to worry Norris. There were many laps where he was behind. He tried to put pressure, but Norris did not make a mistake. So in my opinion, these are important points for the championship, especially if we look at the standings against Mercedes and Red Bull. Red Bull is racing with a Mercedes driver who scored 0 in Monaco. So a lot of stuff. This for Ferrari, a great race and a lot of satisfaction in my opinion for the team. And this was also needed after the difficult race in Imola, especially the qualifications, then the comeback made on Sunday. This is a podium that is fundamental for Ferrari. Meanwhile, let me show you some reported graphics. Norris's victory here with a smiling Lando. Guys, today Lando can really smile because he is actually back in the fight for the World Championship. This is a bit of a wake-up call for Lando, who we've seen a bit more asleep in the last few races, making more mistakes. The team was also starting to believe more in Piastri, but now we find Lando as strong as ever, because Lando is a talented driver. He struggles a bit with mental pressure and usually has a hard time managing strategies, whereas Piastri is better at this. In this case, Norris has once again demonstrated his talent, which is indisputable, and we've seen it since he was also fighting for victories in Formula 2 against Albon, against Leclerc. In short, Norris is one of those drivers who was in that group, those who were strong in the lower categories. Here we see this image with a Leclerc behind chasing Norris, and he tried until the end. In my opinion, Charles must be kicking himself. Perhaps not so much for today, because today he gave it his all and tried, but maybe more for yesterday. Yesterday he also did a great lap in Q3, in my opinion. However, maybe the fact that Norris improved in the end. If Leclerc had done the lap last in Q3, maybe he could have been ahead of Norris. But oh well, with centuries, but you can't change the sessions. Anyway, he did his best considering the car he has at the moment. The SF25 has proven to be good here in Monaco, but it's also a circuit where not too high speeds are reached, so I wouldn't consider it too much. In the meantime, let me show you this Ferrari graphic. Leclerc's second position is good because it's still second place after all. Guys, I would have signed for a second place from Leclerc after Imola, however, seeing how close he got to Norris, it's a bit frustrating in short. I found it very funny when Verstappen's team radio said that my gear changes seem like those from a 1972 Monaco Grand Prix. By the way, it wasn't a random year, and I found it very funny. Guys, about this Verstappen, why is it always funny when he plays on the irony in team radios? And I'm also learning to reassess him in terms of likability. Max Mythical is a bit of an unconventional driver. I really like this about him because he doesn't give the standard answers. He manages to find humor even during the race. When in Monaco you have to maintain concentration and you're under insane pressure, he still manages to lighten these moments. I also want to focus on Alonso's retirement. And Alonso has had the worst start to a season in 10 years with the start of the season without points after 8 races. It's a shame because here it wasn't his fault. A retirement due to a technical failure, a pity for Alonso. Among other things, I met him 2 weeks ago in Monaco, precisely for a car fair, the Top Mark, and I'm really sorry. I met him when I met him, he was very kind to me. No one had recognized him, among other things, when I met him at the fair, but I recognized him. I stopped him and said, damn, but there's Alonso. Why didn't I expect it? And I immediately asked him for a photo. Then 20 people arrived, and he said, first I'll take the photo with him, who asked me first, and then with everyone else. He was very kind. And anyway, apart from this, we hope he can recover because Aston Martin has made an evolution. From Imola onwards, in my opinion, with the updates they brought to the bellies, the car has improved aerodynamically. But now, in my opinion, in the next races, we could see an Aston Martin fighting for the top 10 for points. Obviously, these problems need to be avoided. So be careful. This is the second problem with the Mercedes engine, so we might be careful. It also happened to Kimi. In Imola, a problem. Well, it was a failure of the accelerator. However, in general, be careful with the Mercedes engine that is causing some technical complications. And remember that McLaren is powered by Mercedes. So be careful with these. These are not just random signals. So, having said that, let's take another quick look at the standings. I'll show it to myself, they said earlier. Gasly's mistake, made with the damage to the front suspension at the start of the disastrous Alpine race. Unfortunately, he struggled this weekend, as well as later in Imola. Nice. Anyway. Approved, since the strategy of doing Monaco with 2 mandatory stops. And here we see Lawson's team radio, in this case, trying to change the strategy a bit. Certainly there is more responsibility at the pit and the walls in deciding the best strategy, but in my opinion, it's a slightly different Monaco. Since it's impossible to overtake with these cars, it makes sense to make 2 mandatory stops, because at least you can make the race a bit more chaotic. Then it's true that the driver matters less in this case, but the pit wall matters more. Pit stop strategies on how you get it right, because if the pit stop messes up, you can't do much. The difference, however, is rather than having a race with a predefined strategy and you can't overtake. And so the famous train of past years is created. A slightly unpredictable strategy with a driver who can't make the difference is better. It adds one more variable. This is a bit of my point. And having said that, let's also see the team radio at the end of Leclerc. Let's listen to it together.
Yeah, good job, boy. I guess not much more we could have done today. It's a shame, but we tried everything.
This was Leclerc's team radio. Let's also listen to Norris's.
There you go, P1 in Monaco. Oh, baby, yeah, baby. Well done, guys. Unbelievable job. And as I said...
Before, in my opinion, more than this, even McLaren 1 and 3 is there for them. Perhaps they could have also done a 1-2. But objectively, given the start and also the positions in qualifying, more than this could not be done. With Piastri, they tried something different in the first stop to try to put Piastri ahead of Leclerc, but they didn't succeed. Great Ferrari, indeed, which defended itself from McLaren and managed to contain this McLaren and finish second with Leclerc, so to speak, third. Because I read here the graphics, but second Leclerc and fifth Hamilton, so a lot of stuff for Ferrari. Also, tell me your opinion in the comments. How did you see this race? Did you like it more? This Monaco Grand Prix compared to those of past years with the 2 mandatory stops? How do you comment on the race of Ferrari, McLaren, Red Bull, and also Mercedes? Which, anyway, guys, had a disastrous race, objectively. Tell me your opinion on the Grand Prix. As always, remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any video on the channel. Remember to like the video to support the channel and check out other related Rasta Tuto videos. See you next time.